Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm joined by a friend here in Atlanta, Georgia, Shelby Buso, and she's with the USGBC Georgia chapter. And she's got an interesting career. We're going to talk about academics. Then we're going to get into how did she get into sustainability and maybe a little bit about what's around the corner. So Shelby, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Looking at your background, I think you had some early ties to Atlanta and Woodward Academies. All right, so did you grow up in Georgia?
I did. I grew up in Georgia. I can't say I'm a native because I wasn't born here officially, but moved here when we were pretty young. I was about 4 or 5. I started at Holy Innocents, lived up in Sandy Springs, and then ended up at Woodward.
Nice.
So, yeah, mostly native.
And then went off to college at Wake Forest, is that right?
Mm-hmm. I went to Wake. I majored in anthropology really because it was the one that let me study abroad the most.
There you go.
Got into some just cultural field studies, spent some time in New Zealand and Honduras and Puerto Rico a little bit just to get off campus, but it was a great experience.
Those are amazing trips. My youngest brother, he went to Georgia Tech and did the study abroad, New Zealand, Australia, Fiji. I'm so jealous.
It was awesome.
Now, did that have some influence on you, though, traveling there in those college years? What did you learn? And maybe did any of that lead to a sustainability career or just some fun travels at the time?
It did, I think. At the time, Wake did not have a formal sustainability program. This was kind of back in the day before that was even really a thing.
Okay.
So I majored in anthropology for the study abroad piece, and then I minored in Spanish and there wasn't a lot of Spanish to take in New Zealand. So ended up with this. I had taken a lot of bio classes because I was thinking I was on a pre-med track at one point, but then organic chemistry happened. So that kind of fell off the radar. But I ended up kind of creating my own second minor in environmental studies, which was an interdisciplinary minor that I think now would probably be more akin to a sustainability piece because it was a little bit of economics, a little bit of cultural studies, sociology, physics, chemistry, and biology. So I got to take some of those classes down there. And it was great to be in a country that actually, had environmental protections as a constitutional right. And, we're really trying to make that a stronghold within their government, in addition to the dual culture and respect for, historic preservation type of ideals. And I think it was probably the first step in having, exposure to that world and having those conversations.
It sounds like great early experience. And, fast forwarding a little bit, but now part of your role, though, you help with advocacy of the green building movement and LEED. So you're working with a lot of universities in the area. So maybe you knew what was missing and your influence in some of the universities here. Are there any highlights of what some of the colleges maybe in Georgia are doing?
Sure. I mean, most of the colleges here have been pretty progressive in this green building movement, which is great, especially from the state level perspective, to have institutions like Georgia Tech really making campus-wide commitments to green building and being a leader in the industry because they do see it as a learning tool as well. Okay. And we've seen that at University of Georgia as well, where they've got some great classes and opportunities. Some of the other leaders here that we've worked with specifically are Agnes Scott and KSU. Yeah. We have a really cool program called LEED Lab that they've been innovating in a new partnership way, where we have the class up at KSU, and then we have the students also from Agnes Scott, and they're actually focused on certifying a real building on the Agnes Scott campus. So that's fantastic. Will be student-led, and it's really exciting.
Because employers want that real-world experience. It's exciting that so many, great statistic, actually 40%, 37% of those studying for a LEED GA, Green Associate right now, are in high school and college. So it's a great statistic, but employers want some experience. So if a couple colleges are helping with that, it's amazing.
I think that's one of the reasons we took out the age limit
makes sense.
For the Green Associate exam. So if anybody's interested, go ahead and take it. Yeah.
Still talking college. You were up in Vermont. Can you talk a little bit about what you did up there?
Sure. So after undergrad, I wasn't 100% sure what to do, and thought about maybe the policy or legal world could be a potential framework for me. So I did a certificate program just to kind of test the waters on law, and enjoyed it for paralegal studies, and then was a paralegal for 3 years.
Sure.
And then realized I can do this. I can be a lawyer. And,
Yeah.
Maybe it was a little naive at the time because law school is hard, but it was fun. It was awesome. I got into the program in Vermont, which is one of the leading environmental law programs in the country. And they have a joint degree program. So I did the law, the JD, and a master's in environmental law and policy, which is a really outstanding experience.
Yeah, congratulations. Now, I'm sure the studies were hard, the reading, but did you get out to the Green Mountains and enjoy some nature and some skiing?
As much as
How was
possible.
that? Yeah.
I never could ski because I was a poor student, and it's not cheap.
Right, yeah, no ski
But I did a lot of snowshoeing and sledding and just walking around, and just being there was probably the best inspiration for protecting the environment because it is so pristine and amazing. And the change of seasons is somewhat shocking for someone from the South, but it's also really great to experience it while you're studying it.
That must have been amazing. But then you came back to the Southeast. You came back to Georgia after that?
I actually went first to Puerto Rico.
Oh, Puerto Rico.
So I was a law clerk in Puerto Rico for the district court, for the federal courts for a few years. And that was amazing, pure legal experience work. It wasn't environmental law. I actually worked for a senior judge, and then I worked for another judge who neither one of which had many environmental law cases, but it was still a great exercise in implementing policy work and project management, writing, all of that research skills, and just working for the federal government in and of itself was interesting. And I really liked the jury work, and just more real world experience is always valuable, even in ways I didn't expect.
So did you always like the courtroom dramas growing up, and some of that, but to get onto some actual casework and trial,
right.
That was a good experience.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there's a lot of mundane behind all of that.
Sure.
It's cool to, just organize it. And I like files and order and procedure. And it was really, it was fulfilling, but I really missed the piece of people more because I was behind the doors often and not really always the one out there connecting with anybody. And the nature of the work is you can't really talk about it. So it was hard to always be so introspective, and I wanted to look for something that would be more outward facing.
All right, let's talk a little bit about mentors. Did you have any mentors early in your career? Can you talk to that? Because I think it's very important for everyone coming up in their careers to either have a mentor that you follow, you read, maybe the content they put out, or maybe you have a mentor in person that you meet with and they really invest time in you. So did you have any mentors?
I think there were a couple key people along the way. And when I came back to Georgia, I had this law experience, and I came here and knew that I came for family reasons and knew I wanted to go back into the nonprofit world. And it's kind of a hard transition to make when you're applying for nonprofit jobs that you don't necessarily have experience in, because I had this law degree and was working for the federal government. And so talking to people, why do you want this job? Why do you want to work here right now? And I think most people always expected me to just leave after a couple of years. So what I really see as a cool turning point is when I found a connection through a mutual friend at the Clean Air campaign, which was, again, not necessarily where I saw myself ending up at the time, but had some folks that I knew that worked with them at some of the community improvement districts around Atlanta. And so I thought, let's go talk to them. And Kevin Green was actually leading the Clean Air campaign then. And he also was sort of this reformed lawyer. And I think it was really key to find somebody who had that similar path that I had, who had made a decision to change his trajectory. And so he understood where I was coming from. And I think that was really valuable at that time, to have somebody who got it and was willing to give me a chance and saw that my background could translate to a different, scope of work that wasn't necessarily what it was expected to be. So I think having him give me that chance was really huge. Okay. And so I stayed with Clean Air for a little bit, and then he actually went to Midtown Alliance. And then shortly thereafter, I went to Midtown Alliance, and we kind of worked together on creating a new position there that was focused on sustainability within the Midtown district. So expanded beyond just the transportation realm. And again, that was just really cool to have somebody who knew me and where I was coming from. And then when I was working there, worked really closely with Dan Horgan, who was probably, really formative in my understanding of sustainability in Atlanta. And that really helped, probably set the stage for all the next steps that happened after that. So that team was really, really influential to me.
Yeah, no, those are mentors. And it's always good to go back to them and say, look, here's what I'm doing now. And I just want to say thanks for what you did to help me get there. So, here we are in Georgia. Georgia, a lot of people don't know, has a lot of LEED buildings, has a lot of Energy Star buildings. So we actually do pretty good, even though power is maybe less expensive in our market where we're based. We, for various reasons, do really well with green buildings. So what's coming up with the USGBC Georgia? What are some of your initiatives? And can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. USGBC Georgia is actually a group of 5 different branches. So Atlanta, of course, is our strongest market. Okay. We do have the most activities, the most membership, the most buildings that are certified or on their way to being certified in the metro area. But we also have volunteer groups outside of Atlanta in Athens, Augusta, Savannah, and Middle Georgia. And those groups are strong, and they really want to make an impact, and they all have their own different flavor, which is really cool. So we have some fun projects coming up in those areas. So not only do we need, these big, large commercial buildings, but we really want to make sure that people understand green building is accessible to everybody. We're just about to launch, and will within the next couple of weeks, if not already, a partnership with Habitat for Humanity in Athens, where we are partnering on a design competition up there for what we're calling a kind of tiny home.
Okay.
Design, kind of tiny, because we can't actually have a truly tiny home, but it's kind of tiny, and it'll be 800 square feet ish in Athens. And we want to make sure that people can see that there's a replicable model for, a small to mid-size affordable home that can be LEED certified. So it's green and it's affordable, and people who live there will reap the benefits of that for a long time and their extra savings and utilities and everything. So it's not a big shiny building in downtown Atlanta, but it's, still going to make an impact in a family's life. And so having some more stories to tell like that will be really exciting over the next year.
Yeah, it makes this green building movement look, accessible. So maybe it's not just about that plaque, right? And even on a large building or small building, but are we using these guidelines, these best practices, are we sharing? So maybe those might not get certifications, but here's some of the greenest, smaller homes we can do. And that's a big part, I guess, of what you do. So, I always, when we go to the Green Build Conference every year, and it was in Boston, it was a little chilly up there. It's not just about the LEED plaques. It's so much more. And so, speaking to what's maybe around the corner, some architects we work with, they tell me, and it blows my mind, Shelby, that they're designing parking garages right now for the time when we have autonomous vehicles. They can convert those into different types of buildings.
Make them flat.
Yeah, exactly. So anything you've seen or anything you're thinking personally, what's coming around the corner we need to be thinking of now?
Yeah, I think it's technology, and it is ongoing monitoring. So it's no longer just, like you said, that plaque on the wall, but it's making sure that the buildings are still operating as we certify them even after the fact. So ongoing monitoring data all can feed into what we're calling ARC as this new platform that can be a pathway to a performance score that could be certification, if that's the ultimate goal. It could also just be any building that wants to see how they're doing and to just check in to see how the performance is measuring up against other buildings. So I think that's really the next step, and what we're looking to in the future is having all of these certification systems within one umbrella, and that's going to be ARC. So whether it's a parking garage and we want to use ParkSmart as our map, that it feeds in and ties into LEED if that's possible, or if it's or if it's sites, all of those different opportunities that are out there, because USGBC is more than just LEED now. It's so much, and it's every day there's, a new program that we have to learn very quickly.
Keeps us on our toes, yeah.
It does. It's exciting, and I like to keep learning, but it is a lot to keep up with, and I think the ultimate goal is that will all be encompassed within ARC, so we can have one central place to really look at all the data in a way that makes sense to people.
Yeah, it needs to be user-friendly. So more data, let's really monitor it, but have a dashboard that keeps all the sustainability metrics in one place. Yeah, because it's not just about designing and building green; it's are we operating green, and that data art can help with that transfer.
Right?
Are we going to keep this up? So speaking of, it's pretty busy out there with the new programs. Let's talk a little bit about productivity. Do you have any routines or rituals? Earlier we talked. I have 3 children. You have 3 children, so our lives are pretty busy, but any tips, on just productivity, any routines, rituals that help you?
Yeah, I mean, I started, instead of just having meetings in my calendar, which would end up taking up the entire week, I started blocking off actual time on my calendar for all of the
blocks of time
to-do items that I need. And really, although I complain about some of the reporting requirements and all that, it's really helpful just to keep yourself on task. So making sure that we're not only just having a million conversations with people, but we're checking in to see what the results of those conversations are.
Feedback loop,
yeah. So always just, it's really I'm addicted to my calendar, I think, and making sure that I'm giving myself, ticklers for 2 weeks out, follow up with Charlie on that conversation we had, or whatever the case may be, so that we can not just let things fall off. Because with 5 branches around the state, I mean, I have to make sure I'm checking in with them all regularly as much as possible. And they have meetings in person monthly that I can't always attend. And I just want to make sure that I'm always giving them as much support as possible, because that's why we have local representation of USGBC in all our strong markets, because we want to have that accessibility to anyone who needs it.
Yeah, you have to be intentional with your calendar. If you don't block out time for what's important to you, it will get filled up by others.
Right.
/ what's most significant. Yeah, a 2-week follow-up, go ahead and plan it out now. So,
and being on this virtual team, I mean, that's kind of the way that we're going now. Like you said, they literally will just put a meeting on my calendar, and my colleagues are all over the country. So if they see an open spot, they'll fill it. So I do have to kind of be protective of my time and say, we'll find something that works. And if I need to be, more flexible and move something, I will. But you have to be somewhat protective of that.
It's a connected world.
It is. They can all see everything.
So let's talk about books. Is there a book you've read or listened to that you'd recommend? Maybe, make a good gift. Anything come to mind, an old or new book?
Sure. Right now, I guess, just because it's top of mind, is the Drawdown book, the Paul Hawken one. Just, I think it got my wheels spinning on trying to figure out all of the work and what it means. So where should we focus our efforts? Because it is easy to kind of see a squirrel and run over in that direction. But is that really going to be the best use of your time when you're only one person? So I think, just because that recently has come up in a few different conversations, it's the first one that comes to mind. And one of the pieces that I liked about it was that it acknowledged the fact that educating young women is really going to be, one of the largest impacts on our carbon footprint.
That's awesome.
Across the world. And so I like seeing that and seeing how we can steer that ship to try to focus in that area, because education is such a big piece of USGBC's message, and especially at the community level, and it's what we can do. So be on the lookout for maybe some more of that.
I will. No, it's a great book. And, I've recently been challenged. I've been doing green buildings for, let's just say, well over 10 years, but maybe I'm having the carbon conversation more. And maybe a book like that helps us not just go after lead credits and lead points and put out some great buildings. It's let's have a much bigger picture conversation about some social equity, about who is going to drive the change that we need. So that's the challenge I'd issue to anyone that's listening is, make sure you're an expert at LEED or WELL and all these great programs. However, are we having those higher level conversations and thinking about what it's going to take to make even more change? Lastly, just, here our audience, a lot are maybe breaking into the green building movement. Maybe they're coming out of college, maybe they've passed a LEED exam, or maybe they're switching careers. Any advice you wish you'd have had earlier in your sustainability career?
I think there's probably 2 sides to the coin, and that I know, and we all see that the movement is going towards more technology and understanding the data and really having that background, because I admit I'm not the technical person. So that's not my background, and I wish I had a little bit more of that at my base. But I would also say that most of the people I work with that have gotten far in this industry do have a lot of that, engineering background and that technical piece. And And I would just remind them and encourage folks to also, our schedules are busy and it's hard to take a class outside of, your track and your major, but to think about the people side, because it's the why we're doing this. We don't create green buildings because we love the building. We want it to be healthy for the people in it. So understanding people and culture and why it is that they do things, the way that they do things. Why are they going to choose the staircase just because it's there? Maybe. Or is there some incentive to them being healthier that's more important? So I guess also just thinking about the people first. I notice in a lot of engineering presentations, the buildings are beautiful and they're front and center,
Sure.
but not to forget about pictures of the people using the building.
Of course.
And reminding ourselves who's going to be in there and what's important to them and how are we going to make them the healthiest, most productive person they can be. So.
No, you're right. So make sure you don't fight off the technology. It's coming whether we like it or not. There's going to be more, you mentioned sensors and data about our air quality in these rooms on a more regular basis. What does it mean? How does it affect the people in the building? So, great advice. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing here in Georgia. You really are a rock star and have some great programs going. And just thanks for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Shelby.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode, and you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.